Hello and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, court orders Department of State Services to produce former National Security Advisor, retired Colonel Sambo Dasuki, in court. Suspended Director General of Securities and Exchange Commission, Munir Gwarzo, is cleared of corruption charges leveled by the ICPC at an Abuja High Court. Taraba and Benue state governments reach agreement to end incessant clashes between Tiv and Jukun ethnic groups. And protests continue in Sudan, leading to the sack of public prosecutor and state TV boss as AU threatens country's military leaders with suspension.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's inflation rate drops for the third consecutive month, falls to 11.25% in March.
And on sports news tonight, Golden Eaglets of Nigeria are one win away from qualifying for the 2019 FIFA Under-17 World Cup in Brazil.
And from the nation's capital, federal government signs memorandum of understanding with Interpol to enhance intelligence for combating crimes in the country and the West African sub-region.
A High Court judge in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, has issued a warrant against the Department of State Services to produce the immediate past National Security Advisor, retired Colonel Sambo Dasuki. Justice Hussaini Baba Yusuf issued the order following a request by the prosecutor, Oluwaleke Atolagbe, who requested the court order to enable Colonel Dasuki appear in court to answer to the charges against him by the federal government. At the resumed trial today, the prosecutor told the court that he was ready to proceed with the trial as he had a witness who came all the way from Port Harcourt, but the absence of Colonel Dasuki in court remains a challenge. Colonel Dasuki's counsel, Mr. Victor Okudili, was however surprised that the prosecution was inquiring about the whereabouts of his client.
The case was adjourned for trial today. Unfortunately, the first defendant was not present in court. So we asked for a production warrant for the first defendant so that on the next adjourned date, he will be made available before the court for his trial. The first defendant is in the custody of the state. However, this honorable court has held that the first defendant is in the custody of the DSS, as admitted by the first defendant himself in his earlier application before the court. Therefore, the first defendant, the EFCC that is prosecuting the case, cannot be held accountable for the first defendant when he is in the custody of the DSS. That's our position.
On the other hand, the suspended Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Munir Gwarzo, has been discharged and acquitted by a high court in the Federal Capital Territory sitting in the Maitama area. Mr. Gwarzo and his co-defendant, Sakwanu Garuba, were cleared of charges brought against them by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission. Justice Hussaini Baba Yusuf ruled that the ICPC did not prove any of the essential elements of the offence against Mr. Gwarzo and Garuba. Our correspondent, Amaka Ukafo, reports.
After almost 11 months in court, the suspended Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mr. Munir Gwarzo, and the former Executive Commissioner Corporate Services in the Commission, Mr. Zakwandu Garuba, have been discharged and acquitted of all 5 counts of criminal use of office for personal enrichment preferred against them by the Independent and Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission. Ruling on a no-case submission filed by both defendants, Justice Hussaini Baba Yusuf held that the burden of proof was on the prosecution to prove the essential elements in the charges as required by law, but through its own witnesses and exhibits, which include a board resolution which approved the benefit for an executive director who had spent more than 2 years in office, the charge against Mr. Gwarzo has not been established. The judge said that the 4th prosecution witness agreed on the cross-examination that the board resolution was lawful. He also held that the testimony of the prosecution witness number 2 clearly showed that the first defendant had no role in deciding what was entitled to him, as such, could not have used his office to enrich himself. Justice Baba Yusuf concluded that the evidence cannot be used by any court or tribunal to convict a person. He therefore discharged and acquitted Mr. Gwerzo. In the case of the second defendant, Mr. Zakwandu Garba, Justice Yusuf held that no prima facie case has been established against him because he acted based on a decision of the governing board of the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is the highest decision-making body of the commission. As such, no case has been proven against him.
The court followed the principles of no case submission as enunciated in the relevant laws. So justice is served. We are very grateful. We are indeed thankful.
It remains to be seen if the Independent and Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission will appeal the decision of the trial court. Amaka Okafo, Channels Television News.
The fight against corruption appears to be gathering new momentum, with several prominent personalities making appearances in court in recent times. The EFCC itself has also been giving an account of its efforts, saying it's recovered 239 billion naira in 2018. Now, during his budget defense at the National Assembly last week, the acting chairman of the EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, also stated that cash to the tune of 140.7 million naira was recovered in the first quarter of the financial year. Other recoveries include direct deposits of 2 billion naira, 7.20 billion naira in tax recovery, subsidy recovery totaling 3.06 billion naira, and 292 million United States dollars. So let's take another look at the anti-corruption fight now. I'm being joined on the news at 10 by a legal practitioner, Mr. Wahab Shitu. Thanks a lot for joining us on the news at 10.
My pleasure being here.
Oh, you've seen the high-profile cases, in the past couple of days, weeks as well. So does that give you a good feeling about the way the fight against corruption is going?
Well, I'm super impressed because from all indices on ground, the fight against corruption is on course, particularly under this Buhari administration, under Magu's watch. And the best evidence to prove this is to look at the statistics on ground. You have realized some of the statistics. If you want to measure the performance of the anti-graft agencies, you have to look at certain fundamentals. For instance, look at the record of convictions. Between 2015 and 2016 alone, a total number of 943 convictions were recorded by EFCC. And as of March 2019, additional 142 convictions have been added to it. So if you want to look at the achievements of EFCC in terms of convictions, in terms of forfeiture, non-conviction-based asset forfeiture, and in terms of recovery of stolen assets.
Yes, but some will say if you look deep closely at this recovery, in the early days of the fight, of this administration, there was the complaint that you have properties being recovered, money in different denominations, different values, some in dollars, naira, euros, and it's all that there is no, proper channel with which this is being passed. Nobody knows where it's all kept and whether it's going to be channeled back. So yes, recoveries are happening, but a lot of people are saying...
That is part of the misconception, part of the rumblings in the marketplace, because people don't understand how this thing works.
Okay, explain to us.
For instance, when you talk of recoveries, it can only be in the nature of maybe interim forfeiture or further forfeitures, and there are legal procedures involved. If properties are forfeited to the federal government in the interim, you cannot deal with those assets until the assets is finally forfeited to the federal government. And when those assets are finally even forfeited, there must be a mechanism which are being put in place. For instance, you look at several bills, put to the National Assembly that are yet to be passed. Because there must be a body, asset management recovery body.
Which we don't have.
Which we don't have, and that it has to be backed by law.
So if you're looking at success,
yes,
then it has to follow that particular process that you're talking about, which is the criticism that I'm talking about.
And then you cannot place that at the doorstep of the EFCC, because the EFCC has an asset recovery agency, unit. And these recoveries are taking place on a daily basis. If you look at the quantum of recoveries, if you look at the quantum of convictions, if you look at the volume of convictions and forfeitures, in the history of no government in the history of Africa, no security agency, anti-graft agency in the history of Africa
let's talk
has
about
recorded what the FCC has recorded.
Indeed, you had said that until the case is finally finished, there's nothing they can do about the forfeiture.
Yes.
What of the ones that have finally finished? Because for the average man on the street, except that money is channeled back, into the system and they feel it, You
have a point there, and I think the government is working in that direction. The second coming of Buhari administration promises to be full of action.
As that was going to be my last question, how do you see that playing out? Since he said,
No, it's playing out because if you look at what I have told you, that if you want to measure the performance of, the anti-graft agencies, you have to look at the statistics of grant in terms of convictions, which is unprecedented, in terms of asset forfeiture, which is also unprecedented, and in terms of recovery of stolen wealth, which is also unprecedented. And again, you have to also look at the mechanisms that have been put in place by this administration. For the first time in the history of Nigeria, we have a Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption that is working under the watch of Professor Sesage, doing a lot of work in terms of capacity building, institutional strengthening, in terms of evolving preventive measures to combat corruption. A lot of work is being done. I think those who want to criticize the anti-graft agencies must criticize them on the basis of the records on ground. The efforts being made on ground in terms of statistics, in terms of data, in terms of recoveries. It is only then that it can be said to be fair. Most of the reports that you see people bandy about are unfounded. Because they could not be matched with the achievements on ground. And particularly under Magus was.
That is debatable.
EFCC is posting unprecedented achievements.
Okay, that's also debatable for some people, but we're just going to have to leave it
there. That's what I'm saying, that those who want to debate must debate on the strength of facts and statistics on ground.
And we're going to have to leave it there, because if I leave you, you will go on. Legal practitioner, Mr. Wahab Shitu, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, away from those matters, and the governments of Benue and Taraba states have resolved to deal decisively with anyone caught using disaffection, causing that disaffection between the two states. The resolution comes in the wake of the recent outbreak of violence between the Tiv and Jukun communities in the Benue and Taraba, which led to the loss of lives and property. The deputy governors of the two states have now agreed to tackle the infighting head-on to save lives.
The infamous Tiv-Jukun conflict is rearing its ugly head again. This time, the government authorities in Benue and Taraba states are not leaving anything to chance at ensuring the conflict does not degenerate into yet another crisis. The conflict has always been about land, traditional and modern political power, as well as indigenship. The recent skirmishes in Wukari and Kente between the two tribes in Kente community has escalated to other communities, leading to loss of lives and property, and this has forced the deputy governors of the two states and other stakeholders to call for a roundtable discussion.
Your Majesties,
with everyone pointing an accusing finger at the youths, the representatives of youths of both tribes were asked to make their grievances known.
Our life in Taraba, particularly Ukari, is in danger this way. None of a Tiv person is included into traditional rulership. Are we not residing in Taraba? Are we not voting in Ukari?
They have been given village head, war head, and many other things in the traditional council. They have been employed. If Suwe is employed in the traditional council, they should tell us how many people are employed in Benue State Traditional Council.
Other speakers laud the efforts of the two state governments in ensuring that uninterrupted peace reigns supreme in their domain, as they blame criminal elements for the crisis.
Please, we are pleading with you. We are on our knees. That let the world not laugh at us. You don't have Jukun millionaires. You don't have Tiv millionaires. We are all poor. Why are we fighting?
And for the security operatives, tribal misunderstanding that will degenerate into loss of lives and property will no longer be tolerated.
People coming to burn house, destroy police station, just to go like that. I told him that as far as I'm concerned, enough is enough.
The joint security meeting over, the two deputy governors visit one of the affected communities for a first-hand assessment on the situation.
What I have seen here today is heartbreaking, is devastating, it is uncivilized, and it's totally unacceptable.
We are ready to set up a committee, the committee that will be interfacing within these communities so that they will come up with a lasting solution.
For now, the leaders of both states are not mincing words on the need to ensure that peace returns to Tiv and Jukun communities in their states and to ensure the safety of lives and properties.
In part 2, after the break, INEC issues certificates of return to River State Governor Nyesom Wike and State Assembly members-elect. That's in a moment. Do stay with us.